Jane from Goldbrook and CMA was my mentor, and I was the mentee from the Murray-Darling Basin Authority. But I thought we'd just take a few seconds just to introduce each other, because we probably don't know us. Jane is the Catchment and Indigenous Partnership Manager. Works a lot on strategies and partnerships, based in Hamilton. And when she's not saving the world one river at a time or one wetland at a time, she loves to get down to the rugged beaches or visit the rivers to the north with her kids.
And I'd like to introduce Tristan. Tristan obviously works for MDBA in their environmental watering program. Tristan, as you can probably tell, is a crazy Tigers fan, and luckily enough to have got to the final on the weekend, which I think is incredible. But Tristan has a really young daughter who he absolutely adores to bits. And when he's not, busy saving one waterway at a time, a very big one, as a matter of fact, he actually really loves spending time hanging out at the beach or up in the snow country with his friends and family.
Thanks. So I thought we'd just start with something that brings Jane and I together, and that's the drive to work towards probably a better future for our families that has healthy rivers for me and beautiful mountains and wetlands. I think that's something that Jane and I both share a bit of a passion for. Jane, did you want to add an issue thought?
No, I think you summed that up beautifully.
Okay, yeah, great. So I suppose that's what's driving us with this project. And the project was to help. So yeah, as Jane was saying, I work in the delivery of environmental water through the Murray and the Southern Connected System. So includes the tributaries of the Murrumbidgee and the Goulburn. And one thing we're working on is how do we better engage or allow traditional owners and First Nations to tell their stories about water and rivers and river restoration, with the idea of improving engagement and improving planning and delivery of environmental water to get better and bigger Aboriginal environmental outcomes. So that was a project, and we all met in Warrnambool earlier this year, and I met Corey for the first time, who ended up working with us actually. You'll hear from him next. And I just want to thank Corey for his time and effort. He's a Yorta Yorta man, and which is a nation that we work with to deliver our water. And Caitlin and the rest of the gang for all the cups of teas and things we've had over the time, especially Jane and Jan for all the work they've done, and Shuan. So that's the project, but I suppose I wanted to just talk quickly about what I got out of the mentoring and partnership role a bit more, which was about building relationships, the understanding around how collaboration and working together can really benefit the projects. And Jen and I really worked on, we didn't really just talk about the project that we worked on, but we talked about everything in life, and being a crazy year, and we talked about a lot of different things, and that was really supportive. And Jane's been really amazing, so thanks, Jane. One of the important things that we sort of set up front was that we wanted to be create a space for reflection and open discussion, which we did. And I suppose I just wanted to sort of dive into that a bit deeper, and acknowledge Corey again. And I'm going to probably pronounce this very badly, but it's a Yorta Yorta word from Corey's country, which is Gulpa Nawal, and it means deeper listening, or beautiful listening. And I suppose that's what I've taken out of this mentoring relationship, as well as the project, is to actually listen better and listen better, beautifully, and it's a that two-way process of sharing, understanding each other, building that community, and taking that forward into creating better programs and projects. I was listening to Phil Duncan talk recently, and he talked about us being dancing together, and that's another good way of talking about it, I think. Understanding the different ways of knowledge, different ways of thinking, and the journey that we're all on. So back to the project, and this is Caitlin, who was a mentor in this project, slide from the VIEW, the Victorian Environmental Water Holder. And we've been talking about it for the last year of how do we actually improve Aboriginal environmental outcomes through delivery of water for the environment. And I suppose this summarised it quite nicely for me, and it resonated, so I wanted to use it here, and thanks to Caitlin for letting me do that. but it sort of shows that in lighter grey, we have what we're doing now. We do have probably really good examples of traditional owner or First Nation engagement in most parts of delivering environmental water in the Murray-Darling Basin. But there are a lot of ways we could be doing that better. And there's these short-term and medium-term goals, as well as these much larger transformational changes that we need to start working towards as well. And so this project was trying to pick up on the idea of how do we work towards those medium-term goals? What are the pathways we need to start working towards that will also enable those bigger transformational changes, perhaps in 5 to 10 years? So as we started to think about this, Jane took me back and said, hang on, it's not really just about community and engagement. It's not just jumping into a video or a website, or which was the original project, it was about communicating traditional owners' stories. It was actually, how about we take a step back and just talk to a bunch of people and listen to what we really need. And that was Jane's sage advice back in Warrnambool. And throughout the time, that's sort of what I did. So I went and spoke to the traditional owners, Mildred and Churro, the Commonwealth Environmental Water Office, as well as Caitlin at The View, a lot of our icon site managers throughout the basin, and our Indigenous facilitators, and came up with this sort of pathway. And this is sort of where it all came to, I suppose. And I suppose I just want to acknowledge up front, it's a bit of a reverse engineering. I suppose I went through this process and came up with something which is quite well documented or known already, but for myself, it was a bit of a learning process and sort of coming to understand it more fundamentally. But there's this process we work through where through building relationships is fundamental, and starting at the beginning with those ideas of trust, but also respect. Working through to understanding how the river works from different perspectives, the Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal. Moving into then what cultural water demands are there. So what can we achieve with environmental water in terms of the cultural space, but actually understanding what those water requirements are, which would hopefully lead to shared planning, delivery and monitoring of water from the environment to achieve better Aboriginal environmental outcomes. So there's this pathway that I sort of, common themes through all these discussions I had put together. And then there's this cross-cutting themes of better communication between First Nations, but also organisations. Something that's really fundamental is the connection and reconnection to country, which Corey really made me understand better. It's not just about environmental outcomes, there's a whole bunch of other things that are connected and intertwined there. And the free, prior, informed consent. So this is just a draft thing that we're starting to work with at the MDBA, is something that sort of is the basis of how we engage.
So is it right if I jump in?
Yes, please. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, this is about you and your project, but I guess this morning we were having conversations around the different roles of mentor versus mentees, and quite a common theme was the fact that as mentors we're never quite sure what we're actually doing to support the mentees. And one of the biggest things was I guess the power of a conversation. And from me, when Tristan had gone through this really long process over sort of 7 months of toing and froing, talking to me, asking me questions, going and talking to other people, getting their opinion, and then came up with a really great plan of actually doing these sort of interviews with a range of traditional owners and people who work on the Murray and agencies as well. And then he analysed all that information and then put together this flow diagram. And when he presented it probably a couple of months back, I just went, oh my God, it's all fallen into place. And he really got what was actually happening. And I think it was a really powerful journey for Tristan to start right from the beginning. And the fact that he can actually stand here today and talk through that so articulately is quite incredible, because that was so far from where we were in Warrnambool. So even though we've been in a rather trying environment with COVID, I really think the mentoring program has, I guess, provided that platform for people to have probably some deeper conversations and time to think, rather than just trying to get out there and do. So I don't know, I said it this morning, but I'm just so proud of Tristan. This is amazing.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah. So I'll move on if that's okay. And so what next, I suppose? We've done this grounding sort of work that sort of built this understanding and knowledge and a bit of a framework to work under. There's sort of 3 things that came out. One is the communication project, which I originally went to the program with saying, this is what we need to do. And then wisely, Jane was like, let's just take a step back and listen to some people first. And now we're sort of in a much better position to actually do those projects, talk about what's required and some of these communication products that we might develop. And we're going to do them, I think they'll be much better after this process. These are 2 seasonal calendars. One is the top left, the orangey yellowy one is the is sort of what's going to happen in the Murray this year, and it's sort of transpiring at the moment through spring. But there's all these different months and different seasonal conditions, and we're going to deliver water under these different things. So it's sort of like a visual way of representing what's going to happen in the Murray for the environment this year. But there's also these much more intuitive and much more you know, they resonate with people better, these seasonal calendars, which are actually what First Nations have suggested how they would like to see water delivered. So the next step is to actually try and align these better. How do these 2 calendars fit together, and work with the First Nations to sort of translate some of this scientific guff into something that's a bit more understandable and communicatable. And the third thing, which I didn't quite see coming, but was when I was talking to the View and the Chewer, was actually this process can be a bit of a framework for us all to collaborate. We're all doing different aspects of this framework or this pathway to build better Aboriginal environmental outcomes. But as we sort of started talking to people, they're like, oh, this could be actually, we all need to work together. And this is a nice thing we can all agree on, pick up different parts of it and work collaborative to a shared goal. So that's about it. But I just wanted to finish with sort of talking about what we talked about success would be in Warrnambool, which was, for me, it was a sense of pride in First Nations being able to take pride in water for the environment being delivered onto their country, and the government allowing people to be involved in that discussion. So I think that's what it means for me, and that's the journey forward. Jane?
Yeah, and success for me was, I guess, this photo of you know, the 2 climbers who made it up Everest was, you know, different people, different backgrounds coming together to achieve something. And I think that's the whole point of the twinning program, is to bring together those knowledges and try for something a bit different. You don't have to, doesn't have to be a massive mountain, you know, it can be just something within our own patch. But you know, when you collaborate, there's a power in that. So that was success. And I really feel that, you know, where Tristan got to with his project and what can flow out of this project is going to be quite powerful and probably have some really great flow-on effects for the MDBA.